This episode is brought to you by Absolute Landscapes. Absolute Landscapes is a landscape maintenance company that focuses heavily on commercial property maintenance. Call today for information about the services we provide and how we can best help you. 803-427-5944. But other than that, yes, it's a really neat software. So I know we're going to get into some good topics here. Like I said, I already got a couple questions I know I want to ask you. Before we dive into that, if you can just maybe introduce yourself and say who you are and share a little bit about yourself, and then we can dive in.
Absolutely. My name is Debra Jacobs, and I'm a financial coach. So I help people with foundational skills of finance. Anybody who's experiencing some pain around their personal finances, I help with budgeting and debt pay down and figuring out what your highest goals and values are and how we can flow money towards those, getting set up with a system to make all of your money management easy and automatic and something that works for people's lives. I also teach financial education classes, mostly to young adults, and I provide financial wellness workshops to groups across the country. So I'm an AFC, which is Accredited Financial Counselor, and my most important job is my kids are now grown up, but I am a single mom by choice. So I have a couple of kids who are now in their 20s, and we do a lot of talking about money.
Okay. Well, first of all, I love to hear that because I feel like I feel like money is not taught enough about enough in most households. You know, I feel like it wasn't for me at least. Somewhat in the middle class, area. And I don't know why that is. I don't know, but I know that if you don't speak about money, if you don't talk about it, that puts the illusion there that it's maybe something to fear or something that, some esoteric thing that only a select few of us can understand. And I don't know. I mean, I don't have children, so maybe I can't comment, but I just feel like, opening the door to communicate about that might help, with the education part of it. I don't know. I'm just kind of speculating.
You hit it right on the nose. I mean, I think it's easier for parents to talk with their kids about sex, drugs, and rock and roll than it is about money. And it's kind of the last taboo. It's just not something we talk about in our culture. And that is a shame because if you're very, very lucky, you grow up in a house where your parents teach you skills around money. Most of us don't get that. And we don't get it in school either. That's changing a little bit. There are more schools that are offering classes in personal finance. Usually it's an elective, not a requirement. And most kids come out of high school, come out of college without having really any financial skills. I work with a lot of young people who really don't know the basics about money. And I think we're doing our kids a big disservice, especially today when, things cost a lot of money and life is a lot harder financially than it was 20, 30, 40 years ago.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. And I have a question to ask, and I hope the answer is no. But do you think one of the reasons that families or maybe parents specifically don't talk to their children about money, is it because they think maybe their self-worth is related to the amount of money they make or the amount of money they're able to save, or what? I mean, is there some sort of connection there with, well, maybe if I talk to my children about money and we only have so much, we don't have enough or whatever it is, they feel that their kids are going to think less of them or something. I mean, is there something along those lines, some sort of connection there, do you think?
I believe there is. And I think that a lot of people don't talk to their kids about money because they themselves are afraid of money. They maybe haven't managed it well. They're feeling not great about their financial life themselves, so they don't feel comfortable talking to their kids about it. That's one. But in addition to that, there are just societal taboos. Like a lot of parents don't want to talk to their kids about how much money they make because they're going to tell the neighbors, my kids are going to talk about it with other people. And there's such a taboo in our culture around revealing what you make. I mean, it's really leads to a lot of problems. It's one of the reasons that people end up in trouble with overspending, buying the fancy car that they maybe can't afford, or the huge house that really puts them in a precarious position, because we're bombarded with messages day after day, social media, messages from our parents, messages from our friends, messages from society, that the way you show that you've made it is by spending money, having all of those trappings of money. When in fact, I really urge people to think about what is it that they really want, what's in their heart, what's in their soul. Not what your parents want for you, not what your adult children want for you, not what society says you should want, but what do you really want? And let's talk about flowing the money towards that instead of having a huge car payment, or having the big fancy house that you think you need to prove that you've made it.
Yeah, man, that's such a great point. And that's kind of the question I was asking was, about the external validation. It's almost like a lot of times we feel like we need to buy these things to get that external validation, and really is what it sounds like for a lot of us. Unfortunately, it's just putting us in a deeper and deeper hole as far as whether it's debt or unwise financial decisions, or we simply, we're not making enough to keep up with the purchases that we need to make to uphold the validation, which obviously is not going to last long term. But you said something before that though, and it almost sounds like it's a self-fulfilling prophecy when it comes to the fact of, people, they don't feel like they either fear money, or they feel that there's not enough, or they're not making enough, or whatever it is. And I don't know, just from your professional opinion, isn't it that these are actually some of the things that keep us from making the money that we could make for ourselves potentially? I mean, it's just this, whether it's this fear or this mindset, because you always hear that, you hear from people who are supposedly relatively wealthy, and I don't know what that, the Warren Buffett types, that it's like poverty is a mindset, and so I'm curious to get your thoughts on that. Is it some of these things that, we're talking about here, is these are the very things that keep us from, I guess maybe escaping poverty at the very least?
Yes. And when we say poverty is a mindset, we have to be careful, because there are many people who are born into circumstances that are way more challenging than other people are born into.
Yep.
So some people need to, climb this high, and some people start from here, for those who are listening rather than watching, like from the way bottom, and need to climb much higher to be at the same level. So let's just be clear that there is advantage and disadvantage. There is privilege and lack of privilege. Given that, mindset issues are super important, and people come with stories about money. So I'll give you some examples. One is a client I had who grew up in a very affluent community, but his family was struggling financially. So when all of his friends got the right sneakers that cost, a lot of money, or went on the fancy vacations, he didn't. And so he grew up feeling on the outside of affluence and always feeling less than because of that. So when he became an adult, he got himself into financial trouble. So to make himself feel better, he was the one, whenever he and his buddies would go out for drinks or for dinner or whatever, he'd foot the bill, because it made him feel good. It made him feel like, I can do this. He bought the fancy things because he felt like, finally, I can do this, but it got him into trouble. He was spending more than he was making. And so that's one of many. I mean, I myself experienced this for many, many years. I had the mindset of, I'm a helper, and therefore I can't be good with money. I owned a preschool for 18 years. And I'm I'm a kid person. I'm not a money person. I don't know, what to do with money. I'll never make a lot of money. I'll never know how to manage my money. And boy, oh boy, I wish I had somebody back then like me now, just to have me switch that to say it doesn't have to be either or. I hear this from artists all the time too.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a creative, I'm an artist. I can't be good with money. It doesn't have to be either or. It can be both and. You can be both creative and good with money. You can be both a helper, a social worker, a teacher, and good with money. And, if I, like I said, if I had put a few practices into place, I would be in a better financial position today. It wasn't until later that I got to the point where, I really have to take care of this. Kind of held my nose like, I have to learn about money. This feels so hard. And I had no idea once I got started that I would love it so much. I had no idea. Like I jumped in and I mean, that doesn't happen to everybody. But for me, it ended up being how I wanted to spend my life, is helping people with this. So, made some transformations in my own life, but it was later in life. So I missed the opportunity for all of those years to just do some simple things that would, life is holistic. I think it's very hard to be well, if you think about general wellness, in one area of your life when you are not well in another area of your life. And so you can go to the gym and, have a mindfulness practice and, take care of your body. But if you're stressed about money, that's going to affect your health and wellness. So I think we have to sort of expand our mindset around money to not just think of it as numbers on a spreadsheet that seems scary, but to think of it as a vital component of a well-lived life.
That's a really good point too, because I feel like, I don't know. I just feel like with most people, some of the biggest three areas of their lives would be, their financial life. And maybe that includes their career, their health, mental, physical, and emotional health, and then their relationships, whether it be family, intimate, or whatever. But it's almost like, going back to our first topic we talked about, it's almost like people are, a lot of people are open to being analyzed and scrutinized in their health or their relationships. But when it's like when it comes to money, people immediately shut down.
Yep.
And I just find that fascinating because it's, I mean, I'm of the mindset, and maybe this is, I want to ask you about this too, about the entrepreneur, because you mentioned creative people, and entrepreneurship is basically an art form in itself.
Yes,
And,
it is.
And it's such a spectrum of the people that I've met that are entrepreneurs on how they see money, how they view money. Some of them are very, to put it, I guess, nicely, some of them are very afraid to spend money and afraid of losing that money. And of course, a lot of these people, that thought process has a very real grasp on the growth of their business. And then I've met entrepreneurs who are, very almost free with how they spend money because they focus more on the money coming in than the money going out. It's how do I make more money? Okay, well, if I have to spend more to do this, how can I make more? And so there's all kinds of different thought processes and philosophies when it comes to entrepreneurship. But it seems like that when people are analyzed, or someone looks at their finances, or they talk to an accountant, or they're at a dinner with friends, and the topic of money comes up, it's just like people shut down. And I just find that fascinating because I feel like there has to be some relation to that and the self-worth that people are deriving from. And I guess maybe some people do it with their relationships too, their intimate relationships, or their home life. I mean, I think sometimes people want to advertise things maybe better than they are. You never know what goes on behind closed doors. And the same thing with health too. I mean, you see people, I'm a very big health advocate. But if you are into fitness and you're into the gym to compensate for validation that you can't give yourself, if you're just trying to be the biggest, strongest, jacked person that's walked the face of the earth, well, that's probably, on the extreme side of it. Right. So I don't know. But what it sounds like is, it sounds like there is this relationship to the finances that we see for ourselves and how we see ourselves. And
Absolutely.
I
Yeah.
feel like maybe if we, and I hate to keep going back to self-worth, but it seems like self-worth makes the most sense because, when we talk about these obstacles, these things that sort of block us from experiencing whatever financial life we want to experience for ourselves, it seems like self-worth would be one of the most obvious. And I say that just because it's not just in the financial space. It's also, if you want a career for yourself, or if you, have a specific partner in mind that you want for yourself, or a specific family, or whatever it is. I mean, self-worth is tied to all these things because subconsciously you don't feel that you are worthy of this achievement, whatever this achievement is.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, it's a chicken and egg question. Like, what comes first? Lack of self-worth, and therefore you're going to struggle financially, or, lack of financial so-called success, and therefore your self-worth is going to go down. I think it really works both ways. And in our culture, we're told from early on that money is intricately tied to self-worth. That if you have a lot of money, then you have a lot of worth. And I think it's a lot of work to unravel that. But I think that, and people can spend their lives chasing a dollar. I mean, people can spend their lives. It's all about the money, all about the money, all about the money. And then there's a point that comes to in life and like, why am I spending my life like this? Is this what I really, really, really want? I mean, if we look at it on the young end of things, I think there are a lot of kids today whose parents are pushing them, pushing them, pushing them. Like, what are the biggest majors in college? Finance, right? Finance is probably like the one that most people want to go into because it's where they think they can make the bucks, right? And, I mean, there are others too, but so all through high school, they, burn the midnight oil studying, studying, studying. They do all the extracurriculars. They're captain of this and head of that to get the good resume to get into a good college. Then they're grinding, grinding, grinding in college. Then they finally graduate from college and they get the job at, one of the big finance companies. And they feel like this is soulless. I'm walking. You would not believe the number of times I hear this from kids. Like, I'm walking through my days in sleepwalking because I am making big bucks, but I don't love my job. And now I feel trapped because I've got the expensive apartment and I've got the fancy car and I need to keep working at this high paying job that's sucking my soul. That is not to say that everybody in finance feels like, they have a soul sucking job. Some people love it. And if you love it, fabulous. But if you don't, man, like what drives you? I mean, this is what I'm always talking with young people about. What is it you really want? I always ask the question, if money were not an issue, if you were independently wealthy and never had to worry about money again, how would you live your life? Some people might say, oh, I would sit and, drink margaritas on a beach all day. Yeah, that'll last for a couple of months and then you'll get bored out of your mind. Like what people need purpose and meaning.
Right.
So what is your purpose and meaning? It could be anything. It could be anything. But, and what I'm not saying is follow your passion in your work, because sometimes we can't do that. Sometimes we do have to like work to support a family and whatever, but find a way to do something that pulls your soul.
Yeah, I think unfortunately a lot of people are in that category of what I would consider selling your soul, for a good sized paycheck. And it's just, man, I mean, there's only so much that paycheck is gonna. It's only going to make you feel so good for so long, And at the end of the day, if you feel like you're wasting your days away, basically, if you're just kind of like your days are just passing by, and you're just, I guess, for lack of a better term, miserable for what you're doing. I just can't imagine. Like, that is so depressing to me.
Totally.
But it's also, like you said, it's a very real reality that we just, a lot of us can't just pursue the purpose that we have, or at least we can't do that on the front end. I mean, a lot of times you'll see somebody have a job. Like I did this when I started my business. I had a, and it was crazy. I'll share this story with you. It was crazy because I worked in these jobs, these warehousing jobs, manufacturing jobs, whatever, for really big companies. And the people around me, pay wise, were satisfied with, I mean, it was decent pay for the type of job it was, but I just knew something was pulling at me that, like, I'm not supposed to be here. Like, this is actually draining me to come here every day and work these 8, 10, 12 hours, whatever it is. And I was like, I'm not supposed to be here. But what I had to do, and what a lot of people have to do, is, for the first 4, 5, 6 years, you have to have a primary income and work on something that you feel like you want to pursue on the side. I mean, it's not just, unfortunately, we don't live in the world where we just, if we, especially anything creative, which is insane because the creative parts of society are like it seems like they offer the biggest contributions sometimes not always, but sometimes the creative people have the biggest, like the Elon Musk, who just had the creative idea and just really like hit it exponentially. But it's like, we just can't drop everything and pursue that thing because we do have to have that income. So I don't know. I would say if it is important to you to have your primary income and work on your purpose on the side. And of course that's going to take time, energy, and effort, but if it's important enough to you.
I would also really urge people, particularly young people, to really think, even if they have a very high paying job, to be very careful of lifestyle creep. And what I mean by that is the bigger the paycheck, the bigger the lifestyle. Like the paycheck goes up, so, I can afford a fancier apartment. The paycheck goes up, I can afford a fancier car. The paycheck goes up, I can afford fancier vacation. I would say, if you can do three things. I always say there are 3 basic practices that will get you to where you want to go. One is pay yourself first. And that means when you're making that money, however much money it is, even if you're not making a huge income, or if you are making a big income, figure out what percentage of your pay you can put aside before you spend any money. So most people do it the other way. Most people figure out what all their bills cost, then they go out to eat and they go out partying with their friends and they, do other things. And then at the end of the month, they say, what's left over? I'll save that. Often there's nothing left over. So I say flip that and do it the other way. Save first. Figure out how much, any money that hits your account, whether it's from your job, whether it's from a side hustle, whether it's from a business, whether it's from a gift, whatever it is, take a percentage of that. And if you're just starting out, maybe it's tiny, maybe it's 2%, and that percentage will grow over time. And start building up that muscle of putting that money aside. And then figure out how to live on the rest. Okay, so that's the first, like, really basic principle to start getting where you want to go. Then maybe in 10 years, you'll have enough saved up and invested that if you decide to take a year off and really figure out what you want to do, you're not going to be destitute, right? But put that money away. So that's number 1. Number 2 sounds so simple, but it's really hard in practice. And that is spend less than you earn. Spend less than you earn. And it sounds super simple. But look, we are, as I said before, bombarded with messages to spend money. Spend, 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 spend. And things are expensive. So it's actually hard to do. So you have to make some hard choices. I am not saying live like a monk. I'm not saying eat rice and beans every day. I'm just saying make some choices. If you spend $800 a month on restaurants, maybe spend $400 a month on restaurants and ask your friends to come over for dinner and bring, do a potluck or something the other times. Ask yourself, what are you getting out of what you're spending? Like, are you getting a social hit? Can you get that in a different way? What level of satisfaction are you getting from the spending you do? What do you really need? What do you really want? What can you live without a huge impact on the, happiness, on, how you live?
Right.
So number 2 is spend less than you earn. And number 3 is invest early and often for the long term. Like we know the market just went down, has gone back up a bit, but don't watch it. Just like every month, put money into an index fund or wherever you invest, some low fee market fund, and just let it grow over time. So I wish I had done those 3 things when I was young. Like
Yeah,
I said, I'd be in much better shape than I am today.
it is fascinating to me because this is not the first time I've heard the pay yourself first.
Yeah.
And that's especially a common thing in the entrepreneur space. You know, if you have employees or expenses or whatever, you know, but it's I don't know, man. Entrepreneurs, I would imagine. Do you work with any entrepreneurs, first of all?
I do. I mostly work with individuals when I do coaching. Some of them are small business owners, and I do work with solopreneurs and very small businesses on all of the financial pieces of that.
Okay. So I would imagine that entrepreneurs are probably the biggest category of people who have financial failure, whether it's debt or risk or bankruptcy or whatever. But also on the other end, they're a good portion of the people that probably have extremely, successful financial lives. And so it's, there's a big extreme there.
Yeah.
But I know a lot of entrepreneurs. I mean, I don't know what the statistics are, and not necessarily entrepreneurs, but just people that have become the millionaire status. I mean, I think a large portion of those people were bankrupt at one point in their life.
Yeah.
But I don't feel that it takes that to
It doesn't.
get to that level of wealth. I mean, I don't think we necessarily we shouldn't say, okay, well, I'm automatically going to be bankrupt one day to get to this place. I think we can kind of get ahead of that if we have these kind of conversations.
Right. Well, entrepreneurs are risk takers by nature.
Right. Right.
You have to be if you're going to start your own business. The safe thing is to go work for a corporation, get all your benefits and spend your life working for the corporation. That's safe. And there's nothing wrong with that if that's what people want to do. But entrepreneurs are of a different ilk. They are risk takers. You're one, I'm one. And many of the people we work with who are entrepreneurial also take risks. And so the question is, what kind of risk are you going to take? Are you going to take a calculated risk, or are you going to take like a completely out there risk where you can lose everything? Right. So I would urge people who are considering entrepreneurship or beginning their entrepreneurial journey to do it, absolutely, but do it intentionally and not recklessly. To really look at where are the important places to spend money in my business. What can I not do right now, but maybe hold off for the future when there's more revenue coming in? How can I get to where I want to go without breaking the bank? So those are the kinds of things that we start off on our entrepreneurial journey. I'm so excited. Yeah. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. But then reality hits, and it's always great to have a runway. And that's why I always tell people, like, when you're in that corporate job or before you break out to start your business, put that money aside. Put it aside because you're going to need it. You're going to need it when you get started.
Yeah, and that makes sense. I think one of the things that I've kind of seen over the years, just talking to different entrepreneurs in my personal journey, is it seems like to me the most successful entrepreneurs, and I'm not putting myself in that category. I'm saying the people that I talk to and see. It's almost like they have figured out a way, the right way to use money as a tool, which is a very tricky thing, which is what I think what you're talking about here. The things to spend money on, to not spend money on, because, you can't, the phrase is scared money doesn't make money. You can't you can't try to save everything and think that you're going to be able to maintain or run or operate or expand, especially expand your business, because these things money is the essential. Money and resources and time are the essential tools, for any business, regardless of what the business is.
It's that balance between like risk and safety. You have to as an entrepreneur, you have to take risk. You have to, or you're not going to be successful. But again, like, how much of a risk? Now, this can depend on, do I have children?
Right.
What are my responsibilities? What about my partner? Is my partner on board with this? If my partner is not on board with this, maybe it's a relationship issue. Maybe you need to communicate better with your partner. Maybe your partner needs to communicate better with you. Maybe you need to talk together about what your shared goals and values are, your individual goals and values. How can you support each other for that? I mean, and from both perspectives are good. Like, from one partner, they might say, I am completely terrified of you taking this risk and losing everything we have. That's a valid concern. The other partner might say, but if I don't take this risk, I'm going to be stuck, doing what I'm doing now, which is sucking my soul, and we're never going to have the opportunity to really, make it big or to. So you have to compromise and you have to talk it out and figure it out. So, it's that balance between risk and safety.
What's fascinating about that is those two people, whatever role that person is in, I feel like it's those two people who they almost make the best relationships, because they're able to, one person's, for lack of a better word, weaknesses and strengths, they sort of help the other person in that area.
Yes.
But of course, with any relationship, the magic there is trying to make that work between the two of you. Do you work with couples in that space?
I do work with couples, and a big part of what I do with couples, and I always say, caveat this, I'm not a therapist, but a big part of what I do is not just financial coaching. It's not just numbers on a spreadsheet. A lot of it is a form of life coaching, because again, money impacts everything else. So I do often spend time with couples on communication. How can you communicate with each other? How can you set up a structure in your relationship for ongoing communication about money? And it's not just about money. It's about fears. It's about dreams. It's about goals. It's about individual goals, family goals. And so in fact, later this afternoon, I'm working with a couple on just these issues. Like, we're thinking about getting married, but he does this, she does that. Like, how can we better communicate? How can we make this work? So yes, the answer to the question is yes. I do work with couples.
So that's fascinating, because it sounds like such a simple solution, but you're saying that simply the communication between the two, for whatever the issue is in a lot of these cases the solution to this.
Communication is key. And again, it comes back to what we talked about right at the beginning of our conversation, the mindset that people come to around money. If they've grown up in a family where money's taboo to talk about, it feels shameful, it feels really hard to talk about, you don't talk with your partner about it. And then issues arise. If people have different money styles, one is a freer spender, one is more of a saver. You really have to communicate, because again, both things are valid. You have to live your life and have fun and enjoy life. So you have to spend some money. But if you spend too much, then you're going to get into trouble. So, you need to be on the same page. And it's not always easy, but I think even more important is you need to have a system and a structure and an understanding in place to resolve conflict. And that can be around money or anything else. But I work with people on money. So we put some structures into place to resolve conflicts around money, and communicating, laying out how you see it, making sure you understand how the other person sees it, coming to some common understandings. Here's where we agree, here's where we differ. Do we agree more than we differ? Okay, let's figure out how can we resolve those differences. If we differ more than we agree, then we need to continue talking it through and working it and making sure we understand the other person's perspective. And sometimes it means going to a couples therapist. Sometimes it's a deeper problem than a problem communicating about money.
Yeah. Well,
So,
the thing about intimate relationships, man, is there can be an underlying problem and it
yeah,
manifests in,
in
something
everything.
completely unrelated to the
Right,
actual it's the
right,
dishwasher and it's everything else, the whatever, the grass is the lawn's too tall or
right.
whatever. And so yeah, but that's I think that's a key takeaway is it sounds simple, but it's actually profound is to have a system on how you're going to solve problems.
Yes,
Because whether it's your personal life or your intimate life, or if you have a business, your career, I mean, you're guaranteed to have some sort of problem to overcome at some point. And I guess
absolutely.
the frequency and the magnitude of those problems is going to be proportional probably to the thing you're trying to do. Uh, but you're going to have problems to overcome. And I feel like just having I mean, it's actually a very profound thing to have a system on how you will overcome these problems, a problem solving system.
Yes. So, one thing I always recommend that couples do is make it a regular practice to have a money date. And that doesn't mean like sit with your app and update all your transactions.
Hmm.
It means have a glass of wine if you drink wine, have coffee if that's what you do, whatever you like doing, make it fun and start out just talking about like again goals and values. Like I really want to do this. Let's look at can we afford it? Can we thinking about how we get there.
Hmm.
What are the shared values? What are the individual values? And then looking at the numbers. If you do it weekly, fantastic. If you do it monthly, that works too. But look at all the numbers for that week. Pull it up on the app and say, how are we doing? How are we doing with the restaurant budget? How are we doing with this? How are we doing with that? And then you can make some decisions together. And so, Money Mondays or Finance Fridays or whatever alliteration you want to use, but just choose a day of the week and have that money date. So that's sort of like the basic practice that you can put into place to make sure that that communication is happening.
This reminds me of something Jordan Peterson talks about. He's a psychologist, a professor, social psychology, that kind of thing. I think the thing is about 90 minutes a week is what couples need just for the maintenance of the home economy, basically. A 90-minute, you know, conversation, whether that's broken up or whatever it is. But it probably takes that, at least that, to, to understand and maintain the economics of the household. Um, so I want to go back to kind of something we were talking about earlier. You mentioned about debt, and I feel like this is such a huge thing, especially when we talk about entrepreneurs and people trying to grow their lives or their business, or they're trying to buy a house or whatever. And I think a lot of times there's a confusion about good debt and bad debt, and there's interest rates, and people unfortunately get consumed by debt and they get to the point where they can't keep up with it. And there's supposed to be a system in place for that, because if you apply for some sort of debt, it's supposed to be equivalent and proportional to your income. You're supposed to be able to pay it, but that doesn't work perfectly, obviously. So what's your thoughts on that area? Because I think you said you help people pay down debt
I
and sort of,
do.
yeah. So
Yes. So mainly the debt I'm working with people is consumer debt, credit
okay,
card debt.
okay.
So people get into trouble with credit cards in a number of ways. Now, credit cards can be really good things. I sent my daughter from the United States to New Zealand and back using credit card points. It cost me about $100 in fees. So credit cards, when used well, can be helpful. You can get the rewards from them. They're convenient. They help you build credit. There are a lot of good things about credit card.
Hmm.
The danger with credit cards is that people have this little piece of plastic in their back pocket and it frees them to spend money they don't have. It's like, oh, yeah, I can buy that because I'll just pay it off over time.
Right.
Well, in fact, when you're paying it off over time, you're not buying that sweater for $75. You're buying it for $125 or
Hmm.
$150 because credit card interest is like criminal. I mean, credit cards today, I see people with credit cards that have like 29% interest rate, 27% interest rate. So you're paying a lot of money if you're paying it in small portions over time. So I do help people look at their credit card debt. If people are in a lot of credit card debt, we stop using credit cards. The points are not worth it if you're paying thousands of dollars in interest, right? So you have to get rid of that. And then once the debt is paid down, if you can put some responsible practices into place. And what are the responsible practices with credit cards? Number one, it's always paying your bill on time. Never once making a late payment. So it's putting it on auto pay. So you are always paying it on time. Otherwise, your credit takes a hit.
Yep.
Number two, it's not carrying a balance. Because why would you pay 29% interest, even 20% interest or 18% interest? Why would you pay that? So the practice is not using a credit card for anything that you don't have money in the bank for, right? And that you can immediately pay off. I even suggest that people, if they want to use their credit card, they make a purchase and the next day they get online into their account and they pay it off. You don't have to pay a credit card once a month. You can pay it anytime you make a purchase, just pay it down. And then that balance is gone. So number one, pay it on time. Number two, is to make sure that you're paying that balance in full. I mean, there are other things too. You want to look at what the annual fee is. You want to look at other things like that. But those are really the two main things that you need to be careful with. The danger is that you're going to get over your head. You're going to use it and spend it and just say, oh, I'll pay that off over time. And that's when you get into trouble. That's when you start spending more than you earn. And I have so many clients who run into trouble by the end of the month, so they turn to credit cards. Yep. And so we, put those credit cards in the freezer or wherever, and they start using a debit card instead. There are some dangers with using a debit card, but credit cards have better fraud protection than debit cards do. But if you're, look at your banks online once a day to make sure nothing fishy is happening. If you report it right away, you should be okay. But that will help you to spend only what you have to spend and to make some hard decisions about spending. When you're used to spending freely because you've got that plastic, then you're only spending cash. You go, I'm going to wait to buy that.
I think I was maybe 20, maybe 21 when I got my first credit card. And it's amazing because 2-3 years before that, I was in high school taking my last class that I would ever take of English or mathematics or whatever. So I was 2 or 3 years before that, I was finishing, and I say that loosely, my education on how to speak. And then 2 or 3 years later, I was getting my first credit card. And it's it just, I don't know, it seems like very inappropriate age to get a credit card, but it's just where is this education at when we're, in high school or whatever it is? Because a lot of people don't go to college. And for myself, college just never really seemed like the avenue for me. It just never seemed like the route for me. But I feel like something like financial education is such a critical thing, and we're not taught it, or at least where I wasn't here in America. We were not taught financial education in the early, in 2010 era.
We're still not. We're still not. It's really a travesty. We really should be doing a better job of educating our kids about money. So kids come out of high school, and whether they go to college or not, maybe they go into the trades or they start a business or, they go to work somewhere, whatever it is that they do. The credit card companies want to get them. So there have been some studies that show if you have a certain brand of credit card at a young age, you're probably going to stick with it for life. So they want to get you when you're young. They want to, they want you to start using those credit cards. How do they make their money? They make their money when you buy something and don't pay it back right away, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because they make that interest. So they're pushing you to do that. And, we're not taught how to use them effectively and how to be responsible with them, which is why I love and am committed to teaching financial education classes. And I actually am in the process right now. So my classes are live online.
Okay.
If a group of 3 or more people want to take a class, we'll schedule a class at a custom time that works for them.
Mm-hmm.
And the classes are either 5 hours, 10 hours, or 15 hours. But what I'm doing now is I'm starting to record myself teaching some of the classes, and I'm going to create an online video course at a considerably lower price point so that it gets to a wider audience, so that more people, sort of like, like I said at the beginning, my most important job has been being a mom. And so
Mm-hmm.
when I talk to my kids who are now in their 20s about money, it is, really important. They're really important, and they're fun conversations. And I'm an
Right.
educator. I have my master's in education, so I work really hard to make these classes fun. We play games. I'm not a blah 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 talking head going, an index fund, blah 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 blah.
Mm-hmm.
It's more fun and interactive.
Right.
So I'm working on that. Almost, don't have a name yet for it, but the working name is Mom on Money. Because it's like what you didn't learn from your mom, what you didn't learn from your parents. And as a mom, it's easy for me to talk to you because, I'm a mom myself and care about money and care about my kids and their financial lives, and
Mm-hmm.
therefore care about yours. So
Yeah, if you have a link for that, definitely send me that, and we can attach it to the video. Um, I got to close out here in just a couple minutes, but I want
yeah.
to ask you something just really quick, and this might not be your area, but just to get your thoughts on this. Do you have any faith or see any future in the cryptocurrencies this going around? I mean, this is I haven't looked into this enough to understand it, but I know some people think it's a very promising thing.
Yeah.
Whether I don't know whether it's going to replace fiat currency, I don't know, but
Yeah.
there's a lot of people putting a lot of faith in the crypto.
Yeah. It might at some point. We just don't know.
Okay.
And I don't know enough about crypto to talk
Okay.
responsibly about it. I would say if you have extra money to
Mhm.
invest, please do not invest all of your money in crypto. Not
Right.
at this time. Please don't. But if you have some extra money after you've done your investments in your index fund, in your IRA, and whatever else,
Mhm.
if you're working at a job and um, uh, you've signed on to your company's 401k, or if you're doing all of those things, if you have some extra money you want to play with, why not?
Mhm.
But just don't make it your main investment at this point in time.
Yeah.
I just
That
don't
sounds
think it's tried and true enough.
sounds like a wise thing. I was just curious because there's a lot
Yeah.
of people. I mean, there's some people who are almost religious with this cryptocurrency
Yeah.
thing.
And
Um,
maybe they'll make a ton of money. Who knows?
well, I think what it was there were a handful of people who did make a good bit of money when it first became a thing,
Yeah.
and people sort of jumped on that bandwagon. And now, of course, since everybody's doing it,
Yeah.
the likelihood that you're going to make that kind of money again is probably very low.
Right.
Um, But so one other thing I want to ask you, I kind of asked everybody this before we close. If you could share one of the most important lessons you ever learned, it could be from your career, if it's something from your personal life, if it's something you're comfortable sharing. Um, I know it's maybe hard to pinpoint the most important, but if you could share one of the most important, what do you think that would be? One of the most important lessons?
Yeah, I think that the most important lesson is, it's going to sound super simple, and it's just be brave. Because if there's something you totally want to do, you really, really, really want to do, but you're scared, to start taking some baby steps. So when I was in my early 30s, I always, always, always wanted to be a mom.
Mm-hmm.
And, our relationship had ended. And, I just what I really want to do is be a mom. And I thought literally for years, I would lie on my bed and look at the ceiling at night going, can I do this on my own? Can I? Can I afford it? Is it okay? Will the kids be okay? And I finally made a decision and took action. It's the best thing I ever did. So if I had been able to be a little more brave a little bit earlier, maybe I got there eventually,
Mm-hmm.
but have faith in yourself that you can do what it is that you really want to do. Don't be reckless. Put things into place to make it happen. Shore yourself up with other people who support your dream. Shore yourself up with finances if you can. Put them aside, put money away, and go after it. Do what it is you really want to do.
I love that. Yeah, I love that answer. Because I think the ability to do that, I think is you can't put a value on that, because like you said, in your situation and so many people's different situations, that is sort of the turning point. Had somebody not taken that step, their life would be very, very different.
Yep.
And it's that massive action. It is that acting on that bravery and just kind of taking that chance on yourself, because a lot of times I think people surprise themselves with what they're able to do and handle.
Yes.
I think we're always able to do more than what we think. So,
yes.
Do you have anything else you want to share while you're here? I know we talked about the links to your courses, and if you can send those to me, I'll attach them to the videos. Is there anything else? Do you have social medias or anything?
My course that I talked about is in process right now. So
Okay.
I have my live online courses. I'll send you the link to that.
Okay.
The video recorded ones are, I'm making them now, so it's not yet up and running. But I will certainly send you links to my website and information about the current live online financial ed classes.
Okay. All right.
All right.
Well, look, I appreciate it. It's been a good conversation. I'm going to have to digest some of the information and, maybe take some notes and check out your course and see what you got there. Cause I don't know. I just feel like financial education is one of those things you can, you're never really going to get to a point where you're fully educated. I just feel like there's always,
something to learn,
place for growth in there. That's one of those areas, just like health or anything, there's always something to learn. So, but I appreciate your time. If you can hang out for just a second and I'll explain to you about the video and all that good stuff. But, yeah, definitely appreciate your time here today.
Thank you, Cody. It's been a pleasure.
Hey guys, I really appreciate everybody tuning in today. If you found this content or this episode useful and intriguing, you can visit us on social media. This is Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Rumble, YouTube, Spotify, Amazon Music, and Apple and Google Podcasts. Pure Wisdom Podcast on all social medias. You can interact with us, follow, like, and share there, and we will see you guys next time.